Hello, everybody. It's me, Andy,
And I'm Sean.
and this is a special episode of Commander's Brew.
This week we do a deck reno on Eric's deck.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back. It's Eric's Deck Reno.
Yeah. Not entirely sure what to call this one because it's a
Yeah.
very interesting deck.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun to mess around with. It was a very cool idea for a deck, and to add and remove stuff. It was really fun.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, this is not a regularly scheduled Commander's Brew episode. This is a deck reno. This is something that we do from time to time to give back to our patrons. This is one of the many things we are able to do because of your generous patronage. And here's how we do it. We pick a random patron. In this case, it's Eric. And Eric sent us a deck list. He had a couple notes of what he wanted to do, what the goal was, and we just kind of messed around with it. We put our brains together and kind of made a few cuts, made a few adds. Not a direct one for one, but we have some new ideas and directions to take the deck, hopefully tighten it up a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, if you want to be eligible for this sort of thing, it's very simple. You just head over to patreon.com/commandersbrew and you can help support our show and donate as little as $1 per episode. And you can set limits on how many episodes you're donating on per month and that sort of thing. So it's really very customizable for you. If you want to only give like $1 a month, you can do that, right? So it's very easy to get up and running and started and stuff, and that puts you automatically into the running for a deck reno. We're doing these on average probably like around once a month at this point now.
That's what it turns out to be, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, it also gets you in on other giveaways and things that we tend to do, and when we meet certain goals, we do other giveaways and stuff. We've given away boxes of cards in the past. We've given away essentially like building decks out of stuff we've opened, like sealed product, stuff like that. So there's all kinds of stuff you can get from
Yeah,
the
so stay
from the
tuned
Patreon.
to the stay tuned to the end of this one where we're going to announce the next winner for the next deck reno. And sometimes it takes you a while to get to the episode, so if we don't hear from the new winner right away, we'll send an email your way, but we'll give you a little while to just maybe stumble it on it as a surprise.
Yeah, it's more fun to hear about it on the actual show. So hopefully
Yeah.
you're listening when we get to name it.
Ooh.
But this episode, this deck reno, is like we said, is a cool idea, a very interesting deck. It's a mono blue deck that is helmed by Thassa,
Mm-hmm.
god of the sea or whatever.
The
And
sea.
yeah,
That's what she's the god of
well,
for
it is
sure.
god of the sea. Cool.
Yeah.
And it's not really about Thassa though, is it?
No, no, no. I think the central card Eric let us know about was a card called Paradox Haze. We'll read that for you now. It's an enchantment aura that enchants a player. So 2 and a blue, enchant player. At the beginning of enchanted player's first upkeep each turn, that player gets an additional upkeep step after this step. So you get double upkeeps. That's pretty cool.
It's very cool.
So but there's also a bit of an artifact sub theme with it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of affinity type of things. There's a lot of big creatures, and there's a lot of thopters being generated. A lot of ways to make thopters, and a lot of uses for those thopters. So that's something we also noticed, and we also kind of try to nudge forward.
I like this deck because it looks like it attacks in quotes because it doesn't. I don't think it does much attacking actually, but it does attacks on several different angles. It's a control
Right.
deck that wants to wait, hold back. It's also got this token sort of sub theme that works with some other cards, as you'll see. We'll go through a couple of them. Yeah, it's really. Yeah, so let's talk about the deck as is for just for a
Yeah.
second. Right now, it seems like this deck wants to win. How does it want to win? Basically,
Well, I mean, we have to do a little bit of guessing here because, Eric didn't give us the most detailed description of what every card is in there for.
Mhm.
But I think one of the ways is to just use to swarm with thopters, or maybe use mechanized production on a thopter to eventually get enough to just win the game that way.
Yeah, I think mechanized production is going to come up a lot, so let's just I'll just read it real quick for everyone.
Sure. Good
Mechanized
call.
production is 2 and 2 blue. It's an aura. You enchant an artifact you control, and it says at the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchanted artifact. Then, if you control 8 or more artifacts with the same name as one another, you win the game.
Right. And the important thing to note about that card is you don't have to enchant a thopter. Uh, the clause where it counts repeats is separate from the copying part. So if you have 8 thopters, even if this is on a different artifact, you're going to win.
That is correct. That is actually, I was like, what are you talking about? And now I'm like, yes. Yeah.
Yes.
That is actually super important to note. Yeah.
Right. So we can put that on our coolest artifact that like it has the best benefit from copying. So that's one way this deck's going to win.
Yeah. That's one way it's going to win. The other ways seem to be just sort of classic control style. We're talking about countering spells. We're talking about waiting and playing a big, huge creature that's then going to, sweep up the remains of the game sort of thing. Make it so that people don't want to attack you, so that maybe they'll be incentivized to attack each other. So you'll kind of dodge getting attacked that way. And it seemed so. The original plan again with Thassa seemed like maybe she was a bit of a win condition as well, just because she's a 5/5 indestructible creature with enough devotion that can also become unblockable, right? So Thassa is a bit of a win condition in and of herself,
right?
I think we've given you a pretty good idea of what's in there. There's about 6 or 7 counter spells. There's about 6 or 7 artifact ramp spells. We've got a lot of card draw in here. We're blue. We're running some big things, some big creatures like a Thing in the Ice. We've got Brood Star, which is a giant affinity for artifacts thing that's as big as artifacts that you have. So obviously that's going to go well with the tokens.
I'd like to point out we've got metallurgic summoning. So every time we're casting spells, instants and sorceries, we're getting artifact creatures, and that allows us to get all our instants and sorceries back from the graveyard eventually.
Yeah, that's a good one too. So this is the style, and then of course we talked about Paradox Haze. Well, in order to take advantage of that card, we've got a lot of things that happen on our upkeep. For example, something like this was the one Eric specifically told us about. It's called Chronozoa.
Yeah.
And Chronozoa is 3 and a blue for a 3/3 flyer. It has Vanishing 3. So on your upkeep, you take a counter off of it, and then when it has no counters on it, you sacrifice it. The cool thing about Chronozoa is when Chronozoa is put into a graveyard from play, if it had no time counters on it, put 2 tokens into play that are copies of it. So Chronozoa you get many Chronozoas over a couple of turns, especially with Paradox Engine, and then either you just kind of swarm over with them if you can, or metallurgic mechanized production, works with Chronozoa as well.
Are they artifacts? Does it have to be an artifact?
If you can make them artifacts, which I wonder if we can do. Actually, we can't make that many of them, can we? We can only make
only one.
With our new word. Okay, so never mind. Forget about that. Chronozoa you just get a bunch of Chronozoas.
Still cool.
Still cool. Okay, so let's talk about what we did with this.
Right. So we made a big shift from the start, right up to the top of the deck.
I don't think we've ever done this before, have we?
We've never done this before.
Yeah.
We've never done this before. We swapped commanders on you. No new, like the cards in there. We just took one of the 99, upgrade. We gave him a promotion to commander, and we downgraded Thassa to one of the 99. So just for completion, I'll read Thassa. Thassa, God of the Sea, 2 and a blue, indestructible. You get to scry during your upkeep, scry 1. So that is something that's going to be great for double upkeeps once we got that going. And you can make her or target creature you control unblockable for 2. But we swapped her out for the new commander, Padim, Consul of Innovation, 3 and a blue, Artificer, legendary creature, 1/4. Artifacts you control have hexproof. That's huge. We love hexproof artifacts. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control the artifact with the highest converted mana cost or tied, draw a card. So if we're in position to draw cards, we're going to be drawing 2 cards per turn with double upkeeps. I'd also like to point out that if we have anything with mechanized production on it, we are absolutely going to want to hang on to that artifact. So giving it hexproof is going to be crucial, way more important than what Thassa gives the deck at the moment.
Right. And with this deck, it isn't super hard to have the highest converted mana cost as far as artifacts go.
Not at all.
And I've actually found that the couple of games I've seen Padim in, you don't really need that high. Like you don't need an 8 mana costing artifact. You kind of just need generally a 5 or a 6 will do it.
That will probably do it in most board states.
Most board states, I'd say. Yeah. Okay. So let's, I think this is like a fairly optional switch for Eric's deck. I think if he was relying very heavily on Thassa as a win condition, you could make a case for it. We're going to make the case that Padim might be a little bit better. And actually, Thassa can still be a big win condition, and we'll show you why in just a sec here.
Yeah.
Let's sure go to the next one.
So
here.
The first category of ads we want to add here is since a lot of it has to do with Paradox Haze and those double upkeeps, maybe drawing key artifacts, maybe getting mechanized production, all our key spells here, we want to add some tutors. And mono blue is not easy to tutor things with, but one great way, Andy, this was your discovery. Why don't you read this one?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So one way that blue tutors for things that aren't, because we know blue tutors fairly well for instants and sorceries and even artifacts, which are helpful in this deck, but we need to find enchantments. We need to find Paradox Haze. We need to find mechanized production. And we need to find maybe, again, this is up to Eric, but maybe you need to find Thassa, right? Another enchantment. So one good way to do it is transmute. And this version of transmute finds 3 mana spells because it's got 3 mana. So I'll just read transmute. Transmute is usually going to cost something like 1 and 2 blue.
It always costs 3.
Yeah, and this one it costs 1 and 2 blue. Discard this card. Search your library for a card with the same converted mana cost as this card. Reveal it. Put it into your hand. Shuffle your library. You do it as a sorcery. This is Drift of the Phantasm, so it's 2 and a blue. So it has the same converted mana cost as Paradox Haze and as Thassa, which is interesting. But otherwise, it's a defender with flying that's an 0/5. So this is definitely not in here as the creature. This is in here as the tutor. So it gets you 2 of your most important spells. Certainly, Paradox Haze being the most important one because we're kind of...
Yes.
Eric said he really liked the interaction that card has with a lot of cards, so he wanted to really make that kind of a focus. So Drift of the Phantasms will get it for you. What's another one here?
Ring of 3 Wishes. It's expensive, but in mono blue, we don't always have the choices. So for 5 generic, we can cast an artifact that comes into play with 3 wish counters on it. And then for 5 and tap, remove a wish counter, search your library for a card, put it into your hand, shuffle your library. So it's a full tutor for anything. Costs a lot, big setup, big payoff, but I mean, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, this is probably your 3rd tier of tutor for this type of thing, just because it costs so much. It's pretty slow. The one good thing is like once you cast it, you pay 5 to cast it, and then this deck looks like it can keep up mana pretty effectively with its counter spells and that sort of thing.
Yep.
So if you had no reason to use that mana, Ring of 3 Wishes is a great thing to do at instant speed on your opponent's end step to grab the card you want for next turn. And finally, in the new tutors we're adding, this one seems well built. I mean, especially if you already have Paradox Haze out. Tamio's Journal is 5 mana. It's a legendary artifact, and it says at the beginning of your upkeep, you investigate. And then it also has tap, sacrifice 3 clues, search your library for a card and put that card into your hand, shuffle your library. So this one does double duty. It's really, really great. Tamio's Journal is really well built here because it's a tutor itself. It's making artifacts, and it has an upkeep trigger. So whatever order you get things in, it's going to be pretty good. Now, obviously, we'd have to sacrifice Tamio's Journal to get Paradox Haze, so we wouldn't be able to.
You don't sacrifice the journal. You sacrifice 3 clues.
You sacrifice 3 clues. Right. Sorry, I always think you have to sacrifice the journal.
No. Journal ain't going anywhere.
So this works with everything, right? Like it does everything you want.
Right.
It's really good, and the having multiple artifacts does pay off. Like I said, Brood Star, is that what it's called? Like it's as big as the number of artifacts you control, so that's great.
Yep.
You're going to be making 2 of these once you get your Paradox Haze out. You're going to be making 2 clues. It's also card draw. It's great. So Tamio's Journal is one I would definitely recommend putting in.
Like, just in order, right? Like, early on, sack the clues for Paradox Haze. Now you're getting 2 clues per turn. Now you sack 3 of those clues to get Mechanized Production. Now, once you get enough clues, you win the game, or Thopters, or whatever. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah, you can even do a thing where like you wait for it all, get enough clues, and then sacrifice clues, get Mechanized Production, and then just win. Right? Isn't it? Oh no, it's not.
You have
it's
to
not
have
an
it
end
on your
step.
upkeep.
It's an upkeep.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you can still do that at instant speed.
Yes, you can. You
But you
can
have to put it
tutor
in
at
your
instant
hand.
speed,
You put it
and
in your
then
hand.
somehow, if only we had a way to cast things at instant speed.
Oh yeah.
The Leyline of Anticipation is already in Eric's deck. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. One more tutor. It's not for our It's not for our enchantments though, but it is Fabricate. 2 and a blue for a sorcery. Search your library for an artifact card. Reveal it. Put it in your hand. Serve your library. There's enough key artifacts in here that we are happy to draw this, and we have numerous targets we want to hit with it. The most important of which is coming up very shortly.
Okay. Yes. So those are the tutors that we're going to add in because you want that consistency when you're relying on, especially like this is something we've learned building decks that do this, is when you have something inside your deck that you want to build around, you just got to have it consistently.
Got to get it.
Otherwise, it can be rather frustrating, right? It can just be tough. So get those tutors in there, make that work. There's another card in here that we decided to add that really works well with the new commander and is like, and just a lot of different things in the deck. And it's it's not.
Oh, I did in the wrong order.
What do we got here? Oh, okay, hang on. There we go. It is Liquimetal Coating. 2 generic for an artifact that says you tap it, target permanent becomes an artifact in addition to its other types until end of turn.
Yes.
With Padim out, this is instant speed, saving any permanent from pinpoint destruction, right? From targeted removal. This essentially gives hexproof to anything if someone tries to remove it. It also counts as adding, to the artifact count and all that sort of stuff, right?
Right.
This card is surprisingly good in a lot of decks.
Yep.
Specifically this one.
Yeah. Yeah, because like this is another reason why Padim makes a great commander, because he gives all your artifacts hexproof. And we're relying on Paradox Haze fairly heavily. So just in case someone has enchantment destruction, that's what Liquimetal Coating is there for. Mechanized Production, right? I mean, I guess they can't target the artifact, but maybe they'll try to target the Mechanized Production. Nope. I'm going to use Liquimetal Cooling on it to turn it into an artifact. Now
you always say cooling. It's coating.
Coating. What is that from? Is that from another video game that I play?
Liquimetal Cooling? I don't know.
I do say that a lot. I can't not say it.
That's weird.
Yeah.
I only know it as coating, so I don't know.
And I think the Liquimetal Coating is a great target for your Mechanized Production anyway, just to have multiple copies of it sitting around in case people team up. Like the old, okay, I'll try to cast one destruction spell on it, make him tap. Then on your turn, if you do another one, it'll be tapped out, right? This is the way to be like, I have a few of them.
On your upkeep, and on your next upkeep, you can have 2 more of them.
Yep.
You've got Paradox Haze out. And again, remember what Sean said earlier. It doesn't need to be enchanted on the thing that you're trying to win with, right? So you can still put it on Liquimetal Coating and still have 6 Thopters that'll get you your win, right? So
is it 6 or 8?
Whatever it is, 8. Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, it's 8. It is 8.
Yeah, you're getting 2 per upkeep. Don't matter.
Yeah, doesn't matter. Guess what? I'm getting 1 million of them, and I'm going to win. Okay, so what else is next? Oh yeah, so we're speaking of these upkeep bonuses.
Yeah. What are some other cards that work very well having extra upkeeps? Let's talk about Aeon Chronicler. Normally, it's an avatar that costs 3 blue, and its power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards in your hand. But here's the neat thing about upkeeps. It has suspend X. X 3 blue. X can't be 0. So you cast it for 3 blue X and put X time counters on it. And every time you remove a time counter while it's exiled, you draw a card. And the way suspend works is you remove one every upkeep. So if you got double upkeeps, you're removing 2 time counters and drawing 2 cards for it. So that when Aeon Chronicler finally hits, you'll have a huge handful of cards. So you'll probably have a gigantic Aeon Chronicler with haste. Suspend creatures enter the battlefield with haste.
Yeah, in Eric's deck, he did have he only had a few suspend cards. Now we didn't focus heavily on suspend, even though it is definitely something that Paradox Haze like takes advantage of. But a lot of the times, those suspend cards, they just don't have a big enough effect for Commander, it feels like. But Aeon Chronicler is an exception to that, and the couple that he had in there also are. So yeah, the Chronicler will probably come in and be a 6/6 or even a 7/7 because there's quite a bit of card draw in here, and it itself is a card draw spell. So this one fits right in.
Yeah.
Next we have Honden of Seeing Wind. Speaking of card draw, it's 4 and a blue for a legendary enchantment. It's a shrine, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you draw a card for each shrine you control. So obviously on your upkeep, this is going to draw you 2 more cards if you got your Paradox Haze out, in addition to the normal one you draw. Pretty straightforward. Control. It's kind of a slow thing, right? But it is something that control decks are going to want, and I think you're going to have lots of time to take advantage of something even though it is fairly slow, it's going to be fine.
I think 5 mana is a very, very reasonable rate for just something that lets you draw extra cards every turn.
Yeah.
No one else, just you. It's an enchantment. It's a little tougher to deal with. I think this probably belongs in a lot more decks.
Yeah, I think so too. We always talk about Staff of Nin as a card that, in the colors that don't have good card draw, you're pretty happy to see it, although it is fairly slow. It's at 6 mana. Well, this is one better than that, but it's in blue, which doesn't have trouble drawing cards generally. But I think it's pretty solid. It's pretty decent.
Because I've run the blue Siege. Is it Outpost Siege?
Yeah.
For the loot effect at the beginning, this is just straight better for 1 more mana.
Is it 1 more? I thought Outpost Siege only costs 3.
Is it 3? Okay, for 2 more mana. I still think getting to keep that extra card every turn is amazing.
It's good, yeah. I mean,
and it's not like the Bell. The Bell gives everyone cards. Howling Mine gives everyone cards. This is just you.
It's just you. I mean, it kind of is meta dependent, honestly. If you've got a very fast meta, this might not be a good idea for you. But I think in the long run and in most games, even in a spikier meta, you're like drawing an extra card. That really does add up after a while.
I think so.
Anyways, what's next?
Right. What's next is spicy little number from Amonkhet. As Foretold, 2 and a blue enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a time counter on As Foretold, or in our case, 2 time counters because we're going to get 2 upkeeps. Once each turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for a spell you cast with converted mana cost X or less, where X is the number of time counters on As Foretold. So this is card. I have not put this in a deck yet. I'm very excited to. I think this is a great deck for it because once you get a number of counters on it, like I can cast spells, like the first spell you cast each turn, not just my turn, like the first spell I cast on your turn. So instants become amazing. And then I'd like to point out, this is another 3 mana enchantment. We can transmute for this.
Yes.
Right? This is another card that works very well with our liquid metal coating.
Yeah, coating. Yeah,
right? Because people are going to want to get rid of this once you're doing stuff for free. And this is a control deck's dream, like to just keep all your mana up. So I can cast my sorcery on my turn for free and keep all my mana up for all my counter spells, which I also won't need to spend mana for because
exactly, you may just get those for free as well, right?
I know, what a card. People are absolutely going to want to hate on this. So like, if anything, this is just a great way to take some heat off of your Paradox Haze.
It really is. This card's pretty nuts because it's not like it's once each turn you may pay 0.
Yes.
It's not your first one or something, right? There's no restriction on which spell it is each turn.
Right.
So like you could, yeah. So if you have to counter something, you don't have to use the discount there. If you know you got something else coming up or whatever, it's very flexible on already a very powerful card. So it just is nuts. How much is this card? This card's like $7 or $8.
Yep.
And I think
still new.
Yeah, it's still new. It's a mythic. It's got that mythic tax, but oh man. Oh
It's only expensive right now because people still haven't figured out if they can break it in Modern or something.
Okay. I hope they can't, so we just get it.
Right? Yeah.
What else do we have here? Oh yeah, okay. This is an interesting one. Both Sean and I noticed this one, and you pushed for its inclusion. And I think it's. I just wanted to talk about it.
We gotta at least try it in a deck. Yeah, I think it. Okay, we'll read it out.
Yeah, it's Eternal Dominion. It's 7 blue, blue, blue. So it's 10 mana for a sorcery that says search target opponent's library for an artifact, creature, enchantment, or land card. Put that card into play under your control, and then that player shovels his or her library. And then it has Epic, which is for the rest of the game, you can't play spells at the beginning of each of your upkeeps. Copy this spell except for its epic ability. You may choose a new target for the copy. So it's actually you can't cast spells, not play. I don't think that really makes that much of a difference. But so this is the thing. I want to talk about this card because I've come across the epic spells. There's of course a cycle of them in each color. This
is the best one though, right?
I think this is the best one.
Any permanent from an opponent's deck.
And I think that it's not any permanent. Is it any permanent? Yeah, it is, basically.
Yeah, artifact, creature, enchantment, or land.
Yeah. No planeswalkers.
Oh, not a planeswalker.
No planeswalkers.
Right.
So I've often looked at the epic cards and been like, to me, they're too scary, right? Like, I don't want to have this cast and then someone cyclonic riffs everything and then I just can't cast spells for the rest of the game. Right? Because that's how it works, right? Once you do it once, Epic is out there, and then that's it.
Yeah, so it blanks your As Foretold.
You also we talked about Mind's Dilation, and it blanks that too.
Yeah, it blanks that too. But if you have 2 upkeeps, right? You get 2 of the best thing from one or split up among 2 opponents' decks. You can probably identify which opponent has the best stuff pretty easily. So every turn you're just ripping the best thing. The best thing.
Yeah. And
like do you have a Linvala? Cool. Do you have a Sheoldred? Cool. Do you have a Elesh Norn? Cool. Do you have a Titan, an Eldrazi Titan? Cool. I don't get the cast triggers, but I got all them Annihilator triggers and the indestructibility. Cool.
This must have been a rules nightmare to make this card, because how does it? It's because it says copy this spell. That's why.
Yes, copies are not.
It's like a delay. Is it like a delayed trigger? Is that how it works? Anyways, I don't know. Well, let's not get into the rules about it. But anyways,
right.
But
we always get into rules hypothetical discussions based on what little knowledge we have, and we get very many corrections.
We're usually very wrong about them, so it's not even bother. But Eternal Dominion is it's either going to win you the game or something's going to happen and you're going to lose because of it. But I kind of like that. I think the ceiling is pretty high on it, although the floor is also quite low.
You gotta try it. I think you gotta run it.
Yeah, I think it'd be fun to win because of Eternal Dominion.
Oh man, just like what a story! Like this would create, it would create epic games, right? Like the game that has this in it would be epic.
Yeah, it would.
Aptly named,
and especially if you have the board set up in such a way that you can really protect your Paradox Haze, right? Like that's something I would want to have happen.
But that's the thing; you can just pick the thing that protects it the most.
Yeah, of course, but I mean, like at instant speed, like if they just have a, like a naturalized type of effect, like you can't cast anything in response, you can't counter it.
Yeah,
but hopefully you would
wonder.
Hopefully you already have your liquid metal coating and your Padimo, right?
Yeah, and if you already have your chromozoas out and they're still multiplying themselves, like your stuff's still doing things.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, it's It's a real talking point. I'd be very interested to know if any listeners have used epic spells in any of their brews. And is there a way to get around it? I don't think there is, right? I don't think there's any way to get around the epic thing once it happens.
Unless there's isn't there an artifact that you imprint a spell on and you get to copy that imprinted spell?
But then would that not count the epic thing?
If it counts as copying the spell, then you're allowed to do it. Because
you mean get around? Yeah, okay, I see what you mean. Yes. Yeah. I guess you could do that because that's paying for like an activated ability, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Maybe this might be like the epic spells might be interesting to try and brew around for an episode. But yeah. I think this is a fun card, right? This is super fun. It's obviously a very late game play. So I'd be interested to see if it works out. I think you should try it out and report back to us, see if it was any good.
Yeah.
What do we have?
So let's move on to just some. So those are some cool upkeep triggers. Let's just talk about some general good adds that the deck could use.
Right.
Great Mind's Eye. You know what? This is a classic. It's a 5-mana artifact. Whenever an opponent draws a card, you may pay 1 generic. If you do, draw a card. This is just sort of like the hard way to get to the things we need, right? If we're drawn a bunch of cards, that's a great way to get to our tutors, which can get to our Paradox Haze, or just get straight to our Paradox Haze, or whatever.
Yeah, we're going to get to what cuts we made of this deck in a second, but basically what we did is we took a couple of the like one-time draw spells that Eric had in his deck, and we kind of just swapped them over for repeatable draw spells, and things that like this is an artifact, so this is going to be protected by our commander, and we're going to be able to draw multiple cards off of this, which is going to be better than say like the one card that you play and you get to draw 2 cards or 3 cards. So this is Mind's Eye is going to make up for that and then some.
Yep, for sure.
Even just the first round around the table, it's going to do that for you. So it's pretty great.
Mm-hmm.
Next we have the Vidalcan Orrery. So Sean mentioned we've got Leyline of Anticipation in this deck. Well, that's an excellent ability to be able to play everything at flash speed, at instant speed, basically. So why not let's just get redundant with that ability and play Vidalcan Orrery. Again, it's an artifact that's going to be protected by Padim. It's an artifact that's going to help whatever else that wants to count artifacts. It's the 4-mana artifact that says you can cast non-land cards as though they had flash. It's really great.
I would argue that if you only have room for one, this should bump out Leyline, because it just has more synergy with what we're doing.
It does, and I find it in general just a little easier to recur artifacts. So if you ever do get this in your graveyard in whatever deck you're building, it's usually a little easier to get it back if that's something you want to do.
Yeah, the chance of getting it in our opening hand seems negligible.
Yeah, and even then, like, I've played games where I've had that in my opening hand, the Leyline, and it comes out and it sits there, and everyone's like, well, the first chance we get, we're going to kill that. It's like, okay.
Yeah, right?
I'd almost rather wait a few turns, let someone play like a sword or something or some other artifact or enchantment that it looks more threatening, and then play your Vidalcan Orrery or Leyline after that.
Yeah, kill that.
Yeah, definitely.
One other ad we thought about putting in here is it's a good control-y kind of card. Quicksilver Fountain. In a mono blue deck, this is great. It's 3 generic for an artifact. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player puts a flood counter on target non-island land he or she controls. That land is an island as long as it has a flood counter on it. At the end of turn, if all lands in play are islands, remove all flood counters from them. So if we have double upkeeps, this in theory would hurt us more, but we only have a few non-island lands in here, so it's really not going to do much to us. But it's going to set back our opponents who, maybe their first land in, they can just use that for all their generic payments, so they're not worried. But as time goes on, they get much more restricted in what they can do. And eventually, I think this will do some real good work, because when all lands are islands, all the flood counters disappear. But if one person is way ahead on mana, that person has more islands to go. So other people just get locked out until that person finally catches up. So
Hmm.
like it's a good way to kind of lock some people out of doing stuff.
What it does is it slows everyone else down and allows you to like set up,
Hmm.
right? This is kind of like soft land destruction, a little bit,
Yeah,
right?
it's land borrowing.
Yeah, right. And we've played against this card because Alistair, who the listeners might know from well, we did a deck tech with him. He's co-hosted before. He's a friend of ours. He runs this in his mono blue like Krakens and like Leviathans deck, and
Sea monster.
I've seen it where it's just turned players off for enough turns that they just can't really play, which it's a little stacksy in that way, but the idea is that you do that and then win, right? So, I've 5-color decks hate this card. I'm 4-color decks do as well, and even in 3-color decks, this is really rough, right? Because you have to target it.
Especially if
You have to target a non. It's not like, okay, well, put it on my island. Like, haha, you didn't do anything this turn. It's like, no, no, no. It has to be a non-island land.
yeah.
That's important. So it comes around fast, and it's really starts. It can take you off of one color and really really mess you up.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that's worth it. I think that's worth running in there. Quicksilver Fountain. Next we have Inkwell Leviathan. This is a classic. This is a staple when it comes to artifacts, whether it's mono blue, whatever. He's a 7 and 2 blue for a 7/11 Island Walk Trample. He has Shroud. It's just great to have a card like this to just close down games when you need it to. It's very difficult for people to deal with. Obviously, Shroud, they can't block it. It's just going to get through. If you have Quicksilver Fountain, it just is unblockable. Anyways,
Yeah.
big giant creatures like this. Eric already had a few in his deck. We thought this one fit really well as well.
And as an artifact.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So like Padim protects it. Not that it doesn't already have Shroud, but like
Shroud. Yeah.
no way anyone's got a bigger artifact than you once this is on the board.
Exactly.
Next, this is sort of a bit of a finisher as well, but it doesn't look like it at first, unless people know. It's a Chasm Skulker. 2 and a blue. Squid Horror. 1/1. Whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on Chasm Skulker. We've already identified several ways we're drawing an extra card per upkeep. Like, we got to be a little bit careful because we might have things where we're drawing like 6 or 7 cards per upkeep. Like,
Yeah.
that's not sustainable. But anyway, Chasm Skulker is going to get huge real quick. And the great thing about Chasm Skulker is he's got Wrath protection built in because when he dies, create X 1/1 blue squid creature tokens with Island Walk, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Chasm Skulker. So, once Chasm Skulker gets to a 15/15, maybe Fast's out, we're making it unblockable. We're finishing people off that way. Maybe it's just, or maybe now a Wrath has happened, and now because of the Fountain Islands, all of our squids are basically unblockable. So it's the same amount of power -1 just coming in individual parts.
We also we didn't mention Ristic Study, but that wasn't originally included, and of course that's always because we're not talking about budget for this deck either. If you haven't noticed,
Yeah.
So something like Ristic Study is going to go great in this deck. You're going to draw tons of cards. It's just one of the best card draw spells in Commander. So obviously
Yep.
we're going to tell you to run that as well. Oh yeah, and of course, I mean, I think this is an auto include. I mean, we're talking about something like what was it? As Foretold. I think Mind's Dilation is like it's going to become an auto include in most blue decks. Mind's Dilation, 5/2 blue, an enchantment that says whenever an opponent casts his or her first spell each turn, that player exiles the top card of his or her library. If it's a non-land card, you may cast it without paying its mana cost.
Wow.
This, we said this before we started recording. Like Mind's Dilation does kind of turn into a win condition.
It does.
Yeah, it really does. And it's whether it's from the card advantage that you're getting, and you might even just only get a couple little creatures here and there that serve as blockers, or you might get an enchantment that whatever. I've only ever seen one game where the card wasn't great, and that was because it kept flipping lands, and that can happen. That is the floor outside of finding it on the ground, not knowing what magic is, and not knowing what the card is. But it is it is generally going to get you awesome card advantage and just things that will help you win, because everyone's running good stuff in Commander. Everyone's running, for the most part, running big effects. So Mind's Dilation is really going to pay off. I have, since this card's come out, I haven't made a blue deck that didn't have this in it.
It's amazing.
It's crazy. And I love that it's really only for Commander too. This card's still under $2, and it's 7 mana. It's your whole turn. But guess what? It's your whole turn. But then the next, even if they try to destroy it, you're still going to get something else the next turn. It's great.
And if anything, it also will draw, again, a lot of heat off of your Paradox Haze. Or if people want to grab it, why don't we turn this into an artifact with liquid metal coating and give it hexproof, right?
Exactly. Yep.
That liquid metal plus Padim is such a combo.
Yeah, it's really great. I love what you've done here, Sean.
Yeah, okay. The next card we want to talk about is Basic Island. You need more islands. You need more lands, I think. There's only 35 lands in the deck we got, and I think 6 or 7 mana rocks, which is just a little bit on the low side, especially for a control-y type of deck. Mm-hmm. So we're going to recommend getting up to 38, 39 lands. Also, ones to consider that are not in here, Temple of the False God. That's the one that taps for double colorless if you have 5 or more lands. Also, Lonely Sandbar and Remote Isle. Those are 2 lands that have cycling on them, so if you draw them late, you can turn them into actual usable cards. Just, beef up them lands. We didn't put in here probably the one that lets you keep more than 7 cards.
Reliquary Towers, of course, yes. Yeah, your Reliquary Tower, a definite add. Lands-wise, control decks want to maybe play out something like a creature or sorcery, like a decent one that helps them set up, and then also keep a bunch of mana up. So for counter spells or instant effects. So you definitely always want, they're very greedy decks. So you always want a lot of lands out, and 35 seems too low, especially if you're only running like 6, mana rocks. So you want to run either way more mana rocks and that number of lands, or do something with both. I think you're fine to just add a couple lands, and like Sean said, get up to about 38, 39 lands. So yeah, now we're at cuts. So we've told the listeners what the deck is sort of about, what we would bring to it. Eric knows what's in his deck, obviously, but we're going to talk about some stuff in there that we felt like could come out in favor of these other cards that we've been talking about for the last bit here. The first one was a real head scratcher for us. I think we might, like, it's happened before where we're like, why is this card in it? And then someone's like, oh, it's because it combos with this.
We should point out, right? So we don't make these cuts on a 1-for-1 basis.
No, yeah.
We're just like, here's some cards that could be added. Here's some cards that could be cut. It's up to you to kind of like balance it out. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we may be like, there may be a card we suggest cutting because we don't get how it fits because we didn't brew the original. Right. So why don't you read this one, Andy?
Yeah. So this is definitely one that fits into that. So Alter Reality. It's 1 and a blue for an instant. It says change the text of target permanent or spell by replacing all instances of one color word with another. And the flashback is it has flashback for 1 and a blue as well. So the only I looked at this deck, and you're welcome to go. We post this on our Tapped Out, right, Sean?
We do, yeah.
So go to our tappedout.net/user/commanders-brew. Look at Eric's deck. Maybe you can find why Alter Reality is in it, or Eric, maybe just reach out to us and let us know. We've probably just missed it, but I did look. I did try to find out what it could possibly be, and the only thing I could think about is that you can maybe change. Maybe you thought you could change colorless to a color, but you're not allowed to do that. So I don't think that's what it is. So I don't know. I just don't know. Maybe it's to effectively counter something that would like counter a blue spell or destroy a blue permanent. Like I don't know. I just don't know. Like what's it
might be meta dependent.
Exactly. It could be that. Yeah. It could definitely be that.
It does work well with another. No, it doesn't. No, never mind. Let's move on.
Yeah,
we don't understand why that's in there.
We don't understand why it's in there, so we said cut it. I did look, though. I did try and figure out why. I just couldn't really find it. So let us know.
Another card that probably deserves a cut. It's a tough one. War of Invention. X blue, instant. Improvise. You can tap artifacts to help cast the spell. Search your library for an artifact card with converted mana cost X or less, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Now, we have a lot of artifacts. We can potentially get a lot of Thopters, so we potentially can cast this very cheap with a lot of stuff, but I feel like in this deck, it's positioned as a bit of a win more. I mean, not necessarily win more, but like by the time we have a ton of Thopters going and all this stuff, we probably don't really need to tutor for a specific artifact. In which case, like, I'll just happy to run Fabricate instead.
Yeah, that's the thing. It was there are some key artifacts, of course.
Yeah.
It's generally good, but if we're gonna swap it out, we want to try and find something that gets us our Paradox Haze, as opposed to maybe something. I mean, obviously, getting something like Paradox Engine is nice, or yeah, I don't know, maybe like even just a pretty early Soul Ring or a Vidalcan Shackles or something like that. Those are nice, but like you're saying, it just seems like we want to focus on getting the engine first, right? And as opposed to
Yeah, this card works once the engine's already running.
Exactly. Yeah.
But we want cards that help us get the engine.
Right. Exactly. Okay. The next one we want to talk about is Cumulox. This is a card I'd never even seen before, really. It's pretty simple, though. It's 6 and 2 blue, so it costs 8. But it has affinity for artifacts, so it costs, of course, 1 colorless less for each artifact you control. It has flying, and it's a 5/4. So this essentially is just, I guess, ideally a 2-mana 5/4 flyer, which I've talked about the like how kind of underrated big, 5/5, 6/6 flyers are in Commander. I think they're fine. But I would still want those creatures to do something else, right? Cumulox is just sometimes cheap.
Yeah.
And I feel like that doesn't really matter. So I would either replace this with an equally large flyer that does something else, or something that I don't know, just something better. Because just a 5/4 flyer isn't. I mean, it's still only 4 toughness. Like it's not even the 5 toughness or 6 toughness that you might want.
Yeah.
So.
Not good enough.
Yeah, and as we know, like, if efficiency and mana cost isn't quite as important in Commander, so where this card might have been good in some other format, it just doesn't have the same value in Commander, I don't think.
Next possible cut is an instant for 1 and a blue. Hercules Recall. Return all artifacts target player owns to his or her hand. Again, maybe this is meta dependent. Maybe you face a ton of like artifact players, so this basically takes their whole board away. That's great. I don't see why we would really want this on our own thing. Like, sure, it protects a couple of key artifacts. Maybe we could Liquimetal coat something and get that back too. But most of our stuff is like Thopters or token creatures. Like, we don't like those are bad to bounce.
Mechanized Production's making tokens also.
I mean, it makes Mechanized Production fall off the artifact it was enchanting.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if this was meant to target, or not target, but like if this was to return our own artifacts or someone else's. I think either way it's not that good, because if we have something that's about to destroy all of our artifacts, I'd rather just have a counter spell instead.
Yeah.
Then I can just counter that thing. Or, because then I don't have to worry about casting everything back out again. Or if it's going to do someone else's board, I just, like, that's only, like, you get 1 turn of them not having artifacts. And I just don't think it's, because it's target player. It's only 1 player. So I just don't think it's all that good. Again, could be meta dependent, perhaps. There's something we don't know about there. But as it stands, it looks like this is probably a cut.
Yeah.
Okay. Next we've got, World Slayer. So best we could tell, World Slayer is in here to put on Thassa. Okay, I'll read World Slayer. World Slayer is 5 mana for it's an equipment. It says when equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, destroy all permanents other than World Slayer, and it equips for 5. So it's not a cheap equip cost either. Yeah, best we could see, this card you maybe want to put this on Thassa if she's a creature, but then you swing with her and you destroy everything, and then she's not a creature anymore, and then the whole game is just restarted, but you have World Slayer and Thassa. Is that what you want to do? I don't know. To me, that just seems like too slow. And
I mean, if you have
I really don't like blowing up everyone's lands and permanents if
Yeah, like
if
if
it
you have
doesn't win
something,
you the game, right?
if you have something awesome that's suspended, like maybe that's an outside argument, but that's like a lot of moving pieces, especially when we've removed Thassa as the commander. This is much harder to pull off. So I think all that adds up to World Slayer being a cut.
Yeah, yeah. This is another thing where I'm thinking like maybe there's something I missed. Maybe World Slayer does interact really well with something that I just didn't see because I didn't see any other artifact creatures. There were only 2 suspend creature spells in the deck, and two others. There were only 4 suspend spells in general, and I just don't see how they would have really worked out that well with World Slayer. I don't know.
Yeah. Next cut. It's a single blue for a 1/1 human wizard. It's Time Bender. This is also a morph. You can morph him face down for 3 generic, as is all morphs, and you can turn him face back up for 1 blue. When Time Bender is turned face up, choose one. Remove 2 time counters from target permanent or suspended card, or put 2 time counters on target permanent with a time counter on it or suspended card. We don't have that many suspend cards. Technically, as foretold, does get time counters, so it does work nicely with that, but I think there are just way too few targets for this to be useful in the deck. So that's a cut.
Yeah, we even added a suspend creature with Aeon Chronicler, and I still don't think it's too small an ability. It's a whole card to just take 2 suspend things off of something. I just don't think it's that good. It's just even if you did get it going, it's like I don't know. It doesn't even seem that good. Same thing goes for Clock Spinning. This is a 1 blue mana instant. This has buyback at least. You can do it more than once. It has buyback for 3 generic. It says choose a counter on target permanent or suspended card. Remove that counter from that permanent or card, or put another one of those counters on it. So you can either take them off or put them on. It just feels like it's too small of a move. Like I think you'd make a better argument for Clock Spinning rather than whatever this guy was called, Time Bender.
Time Bender. I mean, let's be honest. Let's just do Contagion Engine and get it over with.
Doesn't that add more? That's Proliferate.
Oh yeah, we want to take off suspend, right?
Take them off. Yeah.
And also, can it reach exiled? Maybe it can't reach suspended cards.
It says, oh yeah, that one might not be able to. Yeah, because it's permanent. Yeah. That wouldn't count. But either way, like Clock. If you really wanted to keep one of these cards, if you really wanted to keep this ability to manipulate them, this is the one to keep. But even then, I still think it's ultimately it's not like you're a control deck. You're sitting back. Why are we rushing so hard to get the 3? The 3 suspend cards out. I realize that Paradox Haze kind of wants you to do that, but unless you're really focusing on suspend creatures, I don't think it's really worth the card slot. I think there's a lot better stuff we can run instead.
Yeah. Next cut is 4 generic for Treasure Keeper. It's a 3/3 artifact creature construct. When Treasure Keeper dies, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a non-land card with converted mana cost 3 or less. You may cast it without paying its mana cost. Put all the revealed casts on the bottom in any order. So, yeah, there's a lot of great cards that are 3, like we've mentioned, like Paradox Haze, Thassa, as foretold. But unfortunately, there's a lot of other stuff that it's very it just doesn't do a lot. I mean, I've not run this in a commander deck. I mean, I'm always happy to get a free spell off of it, but a 3/3 body seems too low impact. And then you might get an enchantment you like, or like, and the worst case is we're running a lot of counter spells. So if you flip over to a counter spell, that's just a straight whiff.
Yeah, it also whiffs with 2 of our mana rocks, which is like the other thing is like, oh, maybe we'd hit a mana rock with it, but Astral Cornucopia,
mana rocks.
Yeah, and what's the other one?
Everflowing
Chalice just come out and are nothing.
Yeah, so too many whiffs and not enough impact.
There's no sack outlet in this deck
currently.
So yeah, so there's no way to do this. There's no way to do this consistently. So, like, I guess if you really built your deck to only have a couple of 3 or less drops, it might work. But I think Treasure Keeper is ultimately you probably just want to throw in another tutor or another mana rock or something if that's what you want to hit with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Next is Ratchet Bomb. It's 2 mana for an artifact that says you can tap it to put a charge counter on Ratchet Bomb, or you can tap it to sacrifice Ratchet Bomb, destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost equal to the number of charge counters on Ratchet Bomb. So Ratchet Bomb is an interesting one. We said it's a cut because, like, I think the most consistent thing with Ratchet Bomb is that you can play it, and the turn you played it, you can kill all tokens. Now, obviously, that's great against token decks, but we want to have some tokens too, so it's not that great there. If you're just going to use it regularly, where you are putting some charge counters on it, and maybe you see like, okay, my opponents have a lot of 3 mana things, so I can maybe destroy those things. But to me, it's just too situational, and it takes too long. It's too slow. This, I guess, could have interacted with, what's it called? The card that we told him to cut, Clock Spinning, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, we could have. Yeah,
but
we could have.
There's so many numbers though.
There. But that's all just so much work. It's so much work to do. Something that I just don't think is worth all that work. Like, if you want to destroy everything, just put a board wipe in there. If you want to destroy, all specific things, there's cards that do that, right? Ratchet Bomb, I get, because this is mono blue, you want a way to do that, but I just think you're going to be working too hard. I think just worry about, like, I'd honestly rather just have a counter spell.
Yep.
Something big that might end the game or whatever, right?
If it's meta dependent, if there are like artifact decks that you gotta have this in for, fine. But it seems like a cut to us.
Also, there's not a lot of recursion in this deck, and so a Ratchet Bomb gets better when you can recur it a couple times. So
yeah, and also, like, there's a lot of numbers we never want to do this for 3. Like, that's our bread and butter number, right?
Yeah,
like,
you destroy everything that you have too, right? So
yeah, tough one.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Phyrexian Processor. 4 generic for an artifact. As it enters the battlefield, you may pay any amount of life. 4 tap. Put an XX black minion creature token onto the battlefield, where X is the life paid as Phyrexian Processor entered the battlefield. So great. We get to invest some life, pay 4, tap it, and get a creature as big as we want. The thing is, there's really no way to gain life in this deck, so it seems like a very hefty price to pay to get a creature of a size we like. It's not actually an artifact creature token. And so I just think we can do better with tokens, and it's not necessary. It's not really serving the overall goal, so we say cut.
Yeah, it seems like maybe this was put in as a bit of a win condition to be able to, like, pump out 10/10s, which is a decent win condition. Don't get me wrong.
But when are you going to pay 10 life for this?
Well, yeah, I like, ideally you want to pay it when you have 40 life, so that you're only down to 30, and then you're making 10/10s, and then that's a big threat. But I've played Phyrexian Processor in a number of decks before. Usually they all involve life gain, and you want to make even really big ones so you can strike once or twice and just kill the person. So even 10/10s get kind of dealt with in Commander. It's weird. And if someone removes this the turn it comes out, well, you're in trouble. If we have Padim, that's going to be harder to do. So I don't know. But I do think what Sean's saying is true. I think you can just kind of do better. That synergizes better with this deck.
Yeah.
Okay. So talking about card draw, we introduced some other card draw options like Mind's Eye and Ristic Study and things like that. So that means you can cut out a few other things. Borrowing 100,000 arrows is 2 and a blue for a sorcery. Draw a card for each tapped creature target opponent controls. This card can definitely draw you a lot of cards, no question about it. But also there's we have like just a straight upgrade essentially to it, right, Sean? There's a card you had in mind?
Keep Watch. Yeah, 2 and a blue for an instant, so it's already better timing wise. Draw a card for each attacking creature. So granted, you only have a small window to cast this during combat with attacking creatures. So creatures that are tapping for other things you don't get the benefit of. But I just think turning it instant speed is going to do better for you.
Yeah, because you're probably going to be keeping up some mana either for activated abilities or counter spells or whatever. So Keep Watch seems to maybe slot in a little better, and it's probably going to draw you around the same amount of cards. And if someone has Vigilance, well, this just still draws you those cards, right?
Yeah, close to it.
Close to it. What else?
Okay, so another cut, again, it's a draw spell, Thoughtcast. 4 and a blue for a sorcery. It's got affinity for artifacts, so it could cost as low as a single blue, draw 2 cards. like I said, we've covered a lot of ways to draw cards already. This is a bit of redundancy that, affinity is good for us, but we're not leaning on infinity so hard that a single blue for 2 cards is so good that I think this card slot is better served elsewhere.
Yeah, I just think, I mean, even if this card was just 1 blue, draw 2 cards at sorcery speed. So that's the best case scenario for this. I don't even think it's good enough to run anyways, right?
I think so.
So yeah, get rid of it. I already mentioned Ristic Study, so yeah, like we offered other card draw options. I think they're just better.
Tons of them.
Next we have Mana Leak. Mana Leak is, of course, 1 and a blue. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 3 generic. This is a great card in Cube. This is obviously an effective card in a lot of other formats because early in the game you can counter something that will have a big impact. Whereas in Commander, it's not quite as good. Generally, we're going to get a lot of mana, or countering something very early is going to have a pretty minor effect. You don't want to waste a counter spell on that. I don't want to, as much as it may screw over one opponent to counter their Cultivate or something. It in the long run, you've got 2 or 3 other opponents that didn't affect, and you're both down a card, and it's not great.
And then late game, this becomes dead far too often.
Late game, it often does nothing. There's a little window there where like maybe around like turn 6, 7, 8, maybe you can run it if someone tries to cast something really big, but the floor is just coming up at you pretty hard at that point. So instead, you can run something like Deprive.
You're already running Counterspell, which is a blue-blue. Deprive is also blue-blue with a minor downside, which is return a land to its owner's hand.
Yep, it's basically Counterspell, except that you also have to return a land. And that is a pretty small price to pay, especially later when you might even still have a land drop that turn. Or next turn, rather. And you don't have another land in your hand, so it's fine. Like, it doesn't even actually affect you later in most games. And finally, High Tide. It's 1 blue instant that says, until end of turn, whenever a player taps an island for mana, that player adds blue to his or her mana pool. So I've seen people play this in mono blue decks in Commander, and it can result in a very big turn. Certainly, you do have to have a lot of stuff to support it because you've got to have, obviously you need something to spend all this mana on. But ultimately, it's a one-time effect that doesn't. I don't know. It's like ramp for 1 turn. It can be a great card, but it can also just be nothing, right? And that's what we want to avoid.
And like, what do we want to, like, why do we want to double our mana in a turn?
Yeah, it seems like with a lot of card draw, you can maybe cast out a few things.
Yep.
But in that
there's
case,
definitely arguments for it.
Yeah, of course there's arguments to be made for it. But in the end, I think the card slot is better served on something like Ashnod's Altar. 3 generic for the artifact that lets you sacrifice a creature and add 2 colorless to your mana pool. Now, this isn't a sacrifice-based deck by any stretch, but, ask around, sacrificing a creature is a very useful ability, especially in this deck, which we haven't really talked about yet, but there's a sub-theme of stealing creatures. He's got, what's it called?
Control magic.
We've got control magic in there. We've got treachery.
He's got things that let you exchange.
Yeah, he's got Empress Galena. He's got Djinn of Infinite Deceit. So if there's ever a point where those stealing things are going to get destroyed, or the exchange is, something funny is going to happen, like a homeward path or something. Well, Ashnod's Altar just gives you an out on that. Not to mention the fact that if anything of yours would maybe get stolen, any creatures of yours, you can just sacrifice them. That ability doesn't seem like that big a deal, but it is very good, especially if like someone tries to steal your commander. Are you kidding? You sack it to Ashnod's Altar. Bam, there you go.
Yeah.
Not only, you also have the mana ramp thing, right?
Right. So, like, I can see a world where you've got a bunch of Thopters going. You can sack a bunch of them for a ton of mana if you really do want that ramp. That's doable. It's just so useful. So easy upgrade.
Yeah, I think so too. Is that it? Oh, is that it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, there we go.
So Yeah, Eric, thanks for sending that in for us. That's the deck reno. That's our take on it. As mentioned, we will put this on tappedout.net/users/commanders brew. So we're going to put a category of like the cards we recommend cutting and a category of the cards we recommend adding. So you can take a look at that. But please feel free if you have any ideas of your own, let us know. Yeah. And again, this is something that we do for our patrons. So thank you, Eric, for being such a generous patron. Hope you enjoyed it. And it's time to announce the next patron for the next deck reno. So,
yeah, go for it.
yeah, Jonathan Freese. Jonathan Freese, if you're hearing this, send us an email, commandersbrew@gmail.com. Here's what we need. We need that rough draft of that deck or that first draft or something like that. We need, what's your goal? What do you want to do with it? What's your budget restriction like? What's your meta like? Just any info you can give us is helpful.
The more info, the more that we get, the more useful any suggestions we make will be to you. So,
sure.
Yeah. So we hope you like this one. Always stay tuned for these. They're patron reward type stuff. So yeah, if you want to become a patron, again, go to patreon.com/commandersbrew and you can get in on the action.
Yeah, and one or two people have written in there like, "Hey, how come there's no interview at the end of these ones?" Because it's not a regular episode. You still get an interview every week because this doesn't take the place of a normal episode. This is bonus. This is patron bonus as a thank you to everyone who's so generous to us.
Exactly. So on that note, we will see you guys on the next regular episode of Commander's Brew where there will be an interview. But until then, we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.